Look closely at this map of early 20th century Europe and the Middle East. By the end of 1918, the four distinct colors you see here, representing the German, Russian, Austro-Hungarian, and Ottoman empires, will shatter entirely. The Great War left 20 million people dead and another 21 million wounded, erasing centuries-old dynasties in just 4 years. That devastation was the result of decades of mounting tension, driven first by militarism. Throughout the early 1900s, European powers locked themselves into a massive arms race. Great Britain and Germany, in particular, spent vast fortunes competing to build giant standing armies and colossal naval fleets of dreadnoughts. But weapons alone didn't cause the war. Europe was also divided by complex secret alliances, defense pacts that promised if one nation fought, its partners would automatically join. Add imperialism, as major powers competed fiercely for colonies and resources across Africa and Asia, and a rising tide of nationalism pushing ethnic groups to demand their own independence. What looked like peace on the surface was actually a highly weaponized gridlock. The entire continent was primed for disaster, particularly in the volatile Balkan region, a territory so tense it earned the nickname the powder keg of Europe. The spark finally caught on June 28, 1914. Gavrilo Princip, a Serbian nationalist, assassinated Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, in Sarajevo. In response to the murder, Austria-Hungary laid the blame squarely on Serbia and formally declared war. This nodal map illustrates what happened next. Because of those secret defense pacts, an unstoppable chain reaction begins. Russia mobilizes its troops to protect its Slavic ties in Serbia. Seeing this, Germany declares war on Russia and then on France to avoid fighting a two-front war. That aggression forces Great Britain to declare war on Germany. Within weeks, the world's major powers split into two enormous opposing blocs. Great Britain, France, and Russia formed the Allied powers, eventually joined by Italy, Japan, and the United States. They faced the Central Powers, Germany, Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, and Bulgaria. These alliance networks were originally drafted to deter aggression. Instead, they ensured that a single localized assassination in the Balkans pulled the entire world into an absolutely inescapable conflict. In the opening months of 1914, Germany attempted to secure a swift victory by invading through Belgium to capture France, a strategy known as the Schlieffen Plan. The French and British armies managed to halt their advance at the Battle of the Marne. With momentum completely stalled, both sides began digging into the earth. They carved out the Western Front, an unbroken 400-mile defensive line of ditches stretching all the way from the Swiss border to the North Sea. This marked the beginning of trench warfare. Troops lived for months at a time in these muddy, freezing ditches. Between the opposing armies lay a deadly stretch of land covered in landmines and barbed wire, known simply as no man's land. The horrors of the trenches were magnified by a brutal mismatch between old tactics and new technology. Traditional cavalry and infantry charges were totally useless against fortified machine gun nests, heavy artillery, and early combat aircraft. Militaries also deployed tanks, flamethrowers, and poison gas for the first time. The human cost of trying to break this gridlock was staggering. Between 1915 and 1916, the Battle of Verdun and the Battle of the Somme resulted in a combined total of over 2 million casualties, with virtually no ground gained by either side. Military technology had outpaced strategic planning. Warfare was no longer a contest of maneuvering armies. It had become a stagnant, grinding test of who could absorb the most casualties before giving up. By 1917, the strain began to break the nations involved. Internal chaos and the rise of the Bolshevik Revolution forced Russia to surrender its territory and exit the war entirely. But as Russia left, a new power entered. Germany began using its submarines to sink American merchant ships without warning. That, combined with the intercepted Zimmermann telegram, a secret German proposal to ally with Mexico against the U.S., pushed the United States into joining the Allied powers. In the spring of 1918, Germany launched one final desperate offensive to win the war before American troops could arrive in full force. It failed. Backed by fresh U.S. soldiers and massive economic resources, the Allies counterattacked with the devastating 100 Days Offensive, pushing the German army to the brink of collapse. Facing imminent military defeat, domestic starvation, and a looming revolution at home, Germany had no choice but to sign an armistice. The fighting finally stopped on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, November 11, 1918. The sudden influx of American money, supplies, and manpower broke the multi-year stalemate. The exhausted Central Powers simply could not keep up with the overwhelming resources of the combined Allies. The conflict officially ended the following year with the signing of the Treaty of Versailles in 1919. The victorious nations gathered in the Hall of Mirrors to decide the fate of the defeated powers. This map shows the result of those negotiations. Diplomats dissolved the German, Austro-Hungarian, and Russian empires, shifting borders into new nations like Poland, Czechoslovakia, and Yugoslavia. The Ottoman Empire's Middle Eastern territories were similarly divided into separate mandates, controlled by Great Britain and France. But the treaty's most intense focus was punishing Germany. The Allied leaders forced the German government to sign a strict war guilt clause, accepting total responsibility for the conflict, and demanded they pay massive financial reparations. The domestic fallout was immediate. The German economy collapsed completely under the weight of the debt. Hyperinflation rendered their money effectively worthless, leaving the population starved, frustrated, and furious at their leaders. That environment of intense national humiliation and financial ruin created a volatile political vacuum. It was exactly the kind of desperation that figures like Adolf Hitler seized upon to build a radical following. The Treaty of Versailles achieved a halt to the fighting, but it did not establish lasting stability. By destroying the German economy and stoking deep national resentment, the peace process operated as a 20-year countdown to the outbreak of World War II.